My name is AJ Riedel, and this is the Thriving Through podcast, the podcast where each week I have real conversations with self-employed consultants about what it really takes to build a sustainable, profitable, and fulfilling consulting practice. So I have a question for you. How do you transform from taking any client you can get to becoming a trusted advisor with multi-year engagements worth millions in revenue growth? Howard Fisher is here to talk about how he answered that question. Howard is a fractional sales leader with sales acceleration, known for his ability to build such deep client relationships that what should be a 6 to 18-month engagement turns into multi-year partnerships. With over 25 years of experience in sales leadership, he's helped small to medium-sized businesses achieve dramatic revenue growth while transforming their entire sales ecosystem. If you want to gain invaluable insights into building lasting client relationships that extend far beyond the typical project timelines, and you want to create profitable, predictable revenue streams, you won't want to miss this episode. Please welcome Howard Fisher. Howard, welcome to the Thriving Through podcast. I'm delighted to have you as my guest today.
Thanks, AJ. It's a pleasure to speak to you again, and I'm really honored that we can have this conversation.
I have two questions that I ask all of my podcast guests right out of the gate. How long have you been a self-employed consultant?
I've been on my own now. This is my third year.
Okay. And tell me about your path to becoming self-employed.
Yeah, so that's a really good question and an interesting story, and I'll try and keep my journey as short as possible. But I actually started my career here in Chicago as an attorney, and I litigated for 5 years, and I was 30 and bored and was not enjoying my day-to-day fulfillment in my role. I knew I wanted to leverage my law career, but I didn't necessarily want to be in court every day arguing about this, that, or the other thing. And I found my way to a very large organization that was a division of Riedel. And I went into sales, and I was actually working with law firms of all sizes, helping them to manage their information and their front office and back office solutions. And I quickly fell in love with sales, but I did really well as an individual contributor and was promoted relatively quickly into management. So I was now building sales teams and managing people in process. About 25, 30 years of corporate life, I moved around to various number of firms, about 5 or 6, always in kind of that sales leader role. And where I developed a passion was really helping businesses align their business plan to a sales plan that was also tied to the marketing plan. And I kind of refer that to the business development ecosystem and really make sure that's aligned and then laser focus on people, process, and how company used top line or how they drive sales in order to impact top line revenue, sales acceleration. And at the time, they were founder led, and about 20 former VPs of sales, senior VPs of sales across the country. And I had a 3-year-old daughter. So I actually had an opportunity to go in-house and lead the security risk consulting sales for a company called Hillard Hines here in Chicago. I stayed with them for about another 3 years before I really developed a desire to brush off my business plan and really give back to the small and mid-sized business community. And I did that, and I re-engaged with Sales Acceleration and left my job in May of 2023, and then I launched in that next month, June.
What has been, looking back over that time, tell me a story or two about the biggest challenges or obstacles you faced and how you've overcome them.
Well, I think the first obstacle was getting my arms around some of the guidance I was giving about how to build a business and making it my own. And it was initially shared with me that it was more of a volume game. And I quickly realized in the first few weeks that volume wasn't where the answers were at. It was really strategically understanding who my decision makers were going to be and who I wanted to work with. And then I asked the simple question, well, who are they complaining about because sales are not where they want to be? And so when working with founder-led or family-run businesses, their traditional kind of couch moment, who they're actually complaining to is going to be business coaches and or usually someone in the financial lane. So a fractional CFO or the CFO in their company or even their financial wealth advisor. So I really started to focus in on that. Plus, I was fortunate in my network that I'd worked with a lot of small, mid-sized business owners. So I also made the conscious decision, well, who are they networking with, who's in their circle, and how can I get to them? And when I shifted that lens, kind of month two, that's when I would say the business development side of my own business started to flourish. I think the second problem was I found a lot of people in my lane or other fractional lanes come in and are really tactical and really want to focus in on their area, which I think is obviously the perfect thing to do because that's what you've been hired for. At the same time, I knew that my experiences were more well-rounded, and it wasn't just on sales. I'd worked with companies going through acquisition. I've been involved in HR scenarios and marketing, plays, and really everything across the dynamic of a business. And so I said, I not only want to get in there, but I want to become a trusted advisor and counselor to my business owners and family members. And switching on that lens and trying to add as much value as I could has really transformed some of my clients from what should be a 6, 12, maybe 18-month engagement. And I've got three clients right now, one that started year three, and the other two are just completing year two. And that's solely because I think I've risen to the challenge of trusted advisor as opposed to just being the sales leader or manager for the team.
Tell me a little bit more. How do you develop that? How do you become the trusted advisor?
One of the things I mandate in my engagements is that I'm part of the executive leadership meetings or I'm in the know-how about what's going on. And that has resulted in me being in at least two, if not three, being the sales chair in their EOS, Entrepreneur Operating System teams. So that means I'm now going to their quarterly meetings. I'm responsible for getting things used through whatever software they have to manage it. So I think that's one. And then I also kind of peel back the curtain and as I tend to have very open and honest and vulnerable conversations. And because everything touches sales, I can adequately share. This is my observation. This is what I see is going on here, going there. So it's not just about sales, it's people oriented, it's process, it's culture. And to date, my clients have really resonated to that. And that's been, both fun and fortunate.
And a trusted advisor is always a much stronger position to be in than just a gun for hire, so to speak.
I'd say probably about 90% of my clients, I could say I believe I'm on the path to trusted advisor or I am trusted advisor.
When you do your work, you have to be on site or is it virtual?
So another great question, AJ. So it's a little combination of both. Relationships, even in this day and age, are better built on site. I also get to see how the company works. I get to hear other conversations. I really get to know the nuances. But once again, I would say you have to pick and choose when you're on site with clients. And it also depends on the maturity of where you are in that relationship. So I have one client that I started working with actually August of 2023. So we're going on our third year. And I used to go every week. And now, because the sales team's in place, the processes are there, we're getting the growth that they want. I'm part of the EOS team. I'm flexing. I'm only going in every other week or when we have kind of sales meetings or one-on-one meetings. Other clients, I've worked in the past 100% remote. I've got a client today that's, on the East Coast in the Boston, Massachusetts area, and that's 100% virtual. So I think you can do either. I think it just kind of depends on the client situation, and I think you pull that lever depending on how important it is for the leader to feel like they're getting their full value about whether or not you're on site. I've got one client that I don't think I have to be on site, but that's what he likes. He's not a remote, you know, he doesn't believe in the remote working. So I go in on Thursdays and it's another client that I'm part of their EOS team. So it's really nice.
Being a fractional, you
Yeah.
have a great qualification question that you ask prospective clients.
Yeah,
It's
so one of the things that is really important is not that they just have a problem, it's that they have a strategic problem that they need to solve. I think in this day and age for small to mid-size, and I think a small to mid-size, like low end of 5 million and high end probably 200 million, kind of in that range, give or take. There are a lot of things that people would like to talk to you about. They're looking for silver bullets on how they can increase sales. And I think everyone would love that if you could just pull it off the shelf. But what I want to hear from a prospective client is they have a strategic problem and they want to solve that problem. Because then they're going to put resources, time, and energy behind it, not just consider, engaging me. So I look for those that have strategic problems and they're like, I want to be that source to solve that problem for them. But after you kind of build rapport and you start talking about the issues, I tend to just focus on, I'm like, where does this actually rise on your business plan as a strategic priority? And when do you want that solved? And what does that solution look like from a numbers perspective? And once I get some of those answers, I start to do if then. So if your problem is sales and it's a strategic priority, what if we had to introduce some new processes? Would you support that? Yes, I would. What if we found out that you had the wrong people in the wrong seats and we had to move people around or maybe find a new person? Would you be willing to make that investment? Yes, I would. And I'm asking those if-thens because sometimes there are sacred cows in family-owned or smaller businesses. And if they say like, Uncle John or Aunt Emily is in a certain position, and they can't be touched, well, that could be an issue if they're not the right fit. So I want to know that going in, to better understand the dynamic in the company so I can manage expectations with the founder or family-run business.
it right out of the gate. So you talk about following a follow the money strategy.
Mhm.
In your first year, what was your biggest fear about the follow the money strategy?
Would
First
I
of all,
have
tell me first, backtrack for a moment. Explain the follow the money strategy, and then we'll get into what the biggest fear was.
Yes, so AJ, the follow the money strategy goes back to the first challenge, which was identifying the right referral partners or centers of influence that could introduce me to founder-led or whoever's running the family business. And that's where I said, well, you got to follow the money in the sense of, well, who are they going to complain about to that sales are not where they wanted to. And usually I find my clients in three emotional states: disappointed, sales going the wrong direction; exhausted, wearing lots of hat; or discouraged because the exit's moving further and further away. So that's why I initially, like when I was looking at the business referral network, I was like, well, who are my centers of influence? And I said, well, business coaches would be. So anyone with a Vistage hat, or maybe they're running their own Vistage peer-to-peer group, because they're hearing from 21, 22, whatever it might be, people in their group, and they're hearing common things, and those people are going to want skilled people in each of the lanes that might be impacting a business so they can be a better resource to them. And the other person is financial, and that would be CFOs or fractional CFOs because they know if this is a revenue problem or this is an expense problem. And if it's an expense problem, they're just going to cut expenses. If it's revenue, they're going to say, hey, maybe it's time we invest in sales infrastructure, sales people, sales processes, sales technology. And that's where hopefully I want to be top of mind for them that they'll make that introduction. So that's kind
Okay.
of like the follow the money, strategy. And so then that's what I did as I just looked to meet as many business coaches and offer to do lunch and learns. do speaking engagements with CFOs also, just trying to let them know I was here, participate in, B2B networking groups. And then I think the first key with any business networking is to make sure you're giving and not just receiving. So I was fortunate, I have a pretty deep network. So I'm always looking for people to introduce other people to. I've, in my engagements, I've brought in marketing specialists who are other referral partners. I've brought in HR consultants when there's been an HR issue. I have someone who just does client relationship management assessments and installation. So I'm trying to do that as well. Brought in a CFO into an account, a fractional CFO, because we were growing so fast. The one of the partners who was running the business was struggling with the managing the money. So, needed help there. So that's kind of my follow the money strategy. And I would say that, probably challenge number five is allowing yourself the grace to continue the business development, even though you're probably uneasy because you have four or five other deliverables that you need to get done for clients. So it's a delicate balance between winning clients, doing the work, and continuing your business development. Because at the end of the day, you can't really. I mean, my goal is not to be with the clients forever, but my goal is to help them grow. At some point, they're going to grow either where they're going to have someone internally that can take over the sales management, or they're going to say, "Hey, we'd like to have a full-time Howard. Can you go find us that person?" onboard them and then offboard yourself. So there's always an exit. I just don't know when that's going to be for most of my clients.
And you mentioned when we talked earlier that you are sunsetting a couple clients, right? That you're
Yeah, that's my plan. That's in my business plan. I've got a couple clients I need to sunset. I've got a couple clients that I was just asked to do some recruiting and build infrastructure and then coach and exit. So I think I have two of those clients that are one's ending in October, the other at the end of the year. And then I've got another one that I think I should sunset. I've been there with them a couple years, and my role is, I think it's at a point now where I think they internally can take over my role. And even though it's not a huge spend for them, I think it gives them the confidence that I'm there. It does take me away from some other clients. So I'm looking to probably offboard three or four and then hopefully bring on, one or two, here in the next few months. I've got a really nice opportunity the next couple of weeks. We'll see how that develops.
you've been on several podcasts recently, right?
Yes,
What's
yes.
the most surprising question you've been asked?
That's a good question. I'm gonna have to think about that for a second. I don't know there's been anyone that's been most surprising. I think what is always, at the end of the day, what I think I'm really delivering is I'm changing emotions. We talked about being disappointed. Well, now, after my engagements, we want them to be excited. They're no longer exhausted. They're engaged in their business because this part of the funnel or this part of the business is now working for them. And they are also anticipating what the future can be. So it gives them new lanes of opportunity, whether that be private equity investment, strategic, family handoff, or just simply continuing to grow the business. So I like to see that hopefully that my business partners, my owners, have had an emotional change and that it's not just impacted their work life, but it's impacted their personal life. And if I can deliver that for the majority of my clients, then I should be able to sleep pretty well at night.
You It strikes me that you give them hope.
Yeah, I think maybe hope realized might be right. It's not just hope but that it's now realized that they can attain the goals that they wanted for their business or their dreams.
And what's the question that you wish would be asked that you haven't been? What question should I be asking you that I haven't yet?
I always love that class. That's like my most recommended sales coaching question at the end of a sales moment is, what question should have I asked that I didn't ask? Because it's the catch-all at the end, right? Um, so I think the one question would be, how flexible are you, Howard, in helping your clients? Because you have to meet your clients where they're at. And I think that the answer to that is highly flexible to a point, meaning that I'm very willing to engage, especially when a business might not have as much to invest as I might be putting in it at the initial start. But knowing that business has a lot of legs into it and that the business owner is very passionate about growing and wants you to be part of that success story. Um, Flexible to the point. The point is that sometimes they're not really looking for what they think they're looking for. And what I mean by that is sometimes they come in like, well, your sales, like just fix my marketing lane, right? Or, come in and just, fix my people. Well, if it's a very, very distinct like marketing, like they got to build a new website or it's more brand awareness because that's how they think they're going to grow sales, then that's not me, but I know a ton of people can be. Or if they have quote unquote a lot of problem people on their sales team and it's more of an HR exercise than it is a sales exercise, then I'm like, let me introduce my HR partners first. Let's take care of that. Let them take care of that while I'm simultaneously helping to build the infrastructure. So it's trying very upfront to really understand where the owner thinks their sales issues are, and then really aligning your scope of work to that need.
What do you do when the issues that they think are the problem, after looking inside the organization, aren't really the problem?
Yeah, I would say a lot of times I'll be told, like, well, my people stink. They're not doing what they should in sales. And you get in there, and I mentioned early on that I'm a big believer in the business development ecosystem. So the sales plan needs to fuel the business plan, and the marketing plan needs to ignite the business or the sales plan. And it's just one big ecosystem. And a lot of times I've gone into office businesses and they don't have a business plan. They don't know where they really want to be 1, 3, 5 years out. Well, they only want to make their number this year. Well, yeah, we can build a sales plan, but then it just becomes you kind of like spinning on a wheel. It's like, I want to know where we want to go and what are those levers to pull us. And then the corresponding marketing plan usually is not aligned. Unfortunately, a lot of business owners look at marketing and sales in silos, but it's a true partnership. And marketing's sole reason to exist is to generate leads for the sales team, period. That's just what my thought is. Um, I realize there are other great, subjective values to have marketing, but if you're not feeding warmer leads in this day and age when people are educated before they raise their hand and say they want to buy, I'm not so sure it's the best use of spend. And then the sales team needs to take that lead and the leads that they're self-generating and be able to move them through the process through excellent vetting and creating sense of urgency and using subject matter experts if needed or anyone else on their team as needed when the appropriate time, kind of quarterbacking them in and then closing the deal from there. I think the biggest last point I'll make here, fallacy that I see some business owners like, well, we'll pay more for net new leads. We'll pay more for someone that's generated a cold, like a cold call or an email. And whenever a business owner asks me that, AJ, I ask them, can you point to one relationship where you are now working with a company or for a service or product that you got to you solely by a cold call? And you responded to that cold call and now doing business with them. And the traditional response, AJ, is, well, I don't respond to cold calls. I'm too busy for that. I'm like, well, if you're too busy to do it in your own business, what makes you think that someone else in your client business that you don't know today is going to do cold calling? So I'm not a big believer in cold calling. I am a big believer in strategic outreach, which is where the partnership with marketing has to be hand in hand. It can't just be get a list, make all these calls. That to me is not sales. That's someone who just wants to feel comfortable that someone made 100 calls, dials, or emails today.
Yeah.
I've always managed my team to results. If it takes you 10 calls to get 5 meetings that you need to make, great. Take you 100 calls, great. I don't care about the volume. I care about the result. Obviously, coaching along the way. If you need to support development in certain areas, like conversations, relationship building, asking the right questions, but activity-based metrics solely alone, I don't think ever get the job done.
That's important words for self-employed consultants to hear as well in their own businesses. Howard, thank you so much for being my guest today on the Thriving Through podcast. And that is a wrap for today's episode.
Thank you, AJ. It was a pleasure. Appreciate it.
What an incredible conversation with Howard Fisher of Hantarra. If there's one thing I want you to take away from this episode, it's this: the difference between being a tactical consultant and a trusted advisor isn't just the work you do. It's about how deeply you engage with your client's entire business ecosystem. Howard showed us that when you stop thinking about quick fixes and start focusing on strategic transformation, your client relationships naturally extend from months to years. So here's one action you can take right now to put this into practice. Identify one current or potential client and ask yourself, do they have a strategic problem they're committed to solving, or just a tactical issue they'd like fixed? Then, if it's strategic, find a way to get involved in the broader business discussions, whether that's executive meetings, strategic planning sessions, or simply having more vulnerable conversations about what you're observing across their entire operation. Remember, as Howard said, at the end of the day, you're not just delivering processes and systems, you're delivering emotional transformation. You're helping business owners move from disappointed and exhausted to excited about their future. Thanks for listening to the Thriving Through podcast. If this episode helped you think differently about your consulting practice, I'd love for you to share it with another consultant who could benefit. And until next time, keep thriving through.